welcome. Raise your inner game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking all things inner game. Tuesdays are for sports and sports parenting. Fridays are for everyone. So how are you today? How are things with your inner game? Stressed, anxious, tired, anything like that pulling you down, or are things pretty good? For me, I will say mixed this week. Everything is good generally, officially, but my energy and fitness have been a little bit off. You can probably tell I have a cold. I'll talk about that in a minute. But that sort of hangs where everything else is gloomy and rainy today. That doesn't help. So it's fine. It's definitely some bright spots, but a little bit bogged down too. So there's some good things to talk about today, my ups and downs for the week. The importance, really the super importance, that sounds so dumb, of working to be your best. Really focusing on being your best, what that means, why it's so helpful. The big snowstorms and floods in California, the power of gratitude, and my favorite gratitude exercise. Dr. John Porter joins us to talk about AI and how it's starting to affect healthcare, and a couple new shows I'm excited about. So we'll start with ups and downs. What things were lifting me up this past week, and what things were pulling me down, excuse me, making life harder. In the ups column for me this week, this might sound a little self-serving, but that's just too bad. Oh my goodness. It's super exciting. It totally lit me up. To not talk about it would basically be just pretending it's not real, just kind of virtue signaling. So anyway, the deal is, I have a couple of students I'm working with now in the Sports Academy coaching. I just got great reports from both of them this week, just thrilling success reports. Even though I should be set with it by now, many people have taken the training, read the book, everyone gets it, is helped by it. You still always wonder, nothing works for everybody. Is this the one that's, it's not really going to be great? And when you're working directly with a teenager one-on-one and their parents have made a significant investment because they're genuinely concerned about their child's struggles with their sport, their happiness, their mental health, you really feel that. If it doesn't make the difference they're hoping for, it's going to feel really bad. On top of that, it's a self-directed program, so most of the time the students working on their own, and it can take a few weeks for them to get to the point where they're likely to have much to report. Also, teenagers, maybe not the best at articulating what's going on with them. And of course, to a stranger also. The point is, for someone who is prone to worry about such things, as I am, there's plenty of opportunity in there to do that. So I was worried, but it turns out I really didn't need to be. My goodness, it was just the opposite. First, I heard from the mother of a girl I was working with. She's on the younger side, just turned 13. It was an interesting case, too, because the things the mom was hoping to help with were really more suited to therapy, honestly. They weren't pure competition, sports-related issues. But the daughter wasn't interested in going to therapy, so the mom thought this might help, kind of come at it from another direction. So that's a little iffy, just to start. But anyway, I heard from her, and she just could not be happier. Everything we were hoping for, better self-regulation, less reactive, more positive, and accountable and focused, and seems to be genuinely having more fun. All this great stuff, and after only 6 weeks. It's crazy, but it was just so exciting to hear. It just lifted me up, tickled me. And then the very next day, I got a note from a young man, 17, from Canada. It was every bit as positive and thrilling. He talked about a bunch of specific moments during a big tryout. He's a soccer player where things, could have gone one way, would have gone that way probably in the past, but because of what he learned, he was able to stay positive and focused and was super happy about his performance. And there were several examples, and it was clear that he just totally gets it and is using it and is just completely and aware and appreciative of exactly the difference it's making for him. And again, he's just super excited about it. So it just can't get better than that. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, and I am still feeling the lift and the buzz from that. For my down, as I mentioned, I got a cold. Been dragging off and on for a week. That's how that goes sometimes. Like one day, like, geez, I don't know if I got something. And the next day, like, I guess I didn't. And the day after that, wow, I really do. So I had a couple of bad nights of sleep, and then one night was pretty good, and then yesterday and today kicked in, no doubt, as you can hear. For sure, it's a cold. COVID negative, we'll see. Sometimes that doesn't work out either accurately right away. But anyway, it's not a big thing. It's a cold, but it's a load, right? You know exactly what that's like. And, one of the reasons we talk about downs in this segment is in part to illustrate what we mean in the training by inner gravity and high gravity situations. High gravity situations are anything that makes it harder for you to be at your best, anything you have to overcome to get to the level you want. And that can sound philosophical and theoretical, but in reality, it's things like this. I got a cold. I'm low energy. I need to do things to adapt to that. That's it. So anyway, those are my ups and downs for the week. Great reports from a couple of coaching students, and I've got a cold. And it's rainy and cloudy out. All right, next up, our quote of the week. All right, our quote of the week. This week we'll hear from Buddha. I know it's a little pretentious maybe, but it's a great quote. So here it is. The only real failure in life is not to be true to the best one knows. The only real failure in life is not to be true to the best one knows. You have to think about that a bit, I think, to get it, but there's a lot in there. The best one knows. Okay, we'll start with that. We have to assume he means doing the right thing, basically, being the kind of person we know we should be, we can be, we want to be, the best person we know to be, the kind of person we would be genuinely proud of. That's the best one knows. It's sort of the best we can imagine in ourselves and just in the world. And so then he says the only real failure in life is to not be true to that, to not be that person we want to be, we know we can be. That's the only real failure. I suppose you could argue with the word only there. There are certainly other kinds of failures besides disappointing ourselves. But I still get it. I think what I think he's saying, or at least what it says to me, is the most important failure, the one that matters the most to us, is not being true to the best we know. In all the work I've done, it seems to be that the most fundamental question for our happiness and satisfaction with our lives is how we feel about ourselves as a person. And this isn't like one all-encompassing statement about who we are. It's day-to-day, moment to moment. What kind of person am I being today, right now? Nothing makes a bigger difference for our happiness than that, than being able to say, I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I'm still weird and a loser, of course, it goes without saying, in a bunch of ways, but you get right down to it. How am I being in the world with the people I care about? Doing pretty good. That's what's the most important thing to us. So much of what I talk about speaks to the same thing. The Stoic memento mori, if I was to die tomorrow, is how I'm being right now, the way I'd want to be remembered. The Marshawn Lynch technique, where you look in the mirror and say, what kind of person do I want to be today? Even the subtitle to the Raise Your Inner Game book, the last line of that says, to live a life you're proud of every day. It's all the same thing, and it's the most important thing. So this quote helps connect with that and be inspired and reminded to lift yourself up, to be your best, one day, one moment at a time. And that is our quote for today from Buddha. The only real failure in life is not to be true to the best one knows. I love it. All right, think about that. We'll move on to our top stories. All right, top stories. So this week, my top story is the big storms in California. It's just unbelievable to look at the pictures of the snowfall they got and now the flooding. I mean, you get used to seeing pictures like that, though honestly, I can't remember ever seeing pictures of snow that deep. And we just got back from Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and I love mountain snow, ski towns, cozy-looking snowpack on the roof. My baseline is very positive for having a lot of snow, but this is way beyond that. It's just crazy to think about how damaging and disruptive it must be. You see pictures of snow like 12 feet, 15 feet deep. These deep channels. I get this image in my mind. This deep, basically like a canyon carved out of the snow, just enough to drive through. It's like a maze of snow where it's twice as deep as the car is high. Houses that you can almost not see. The snow is so deep, it's to the top of the roof of the house. I've been in a couple of giant snowstorms in my life. I think the most famous one, maybe, at least in our area, was the Minneapolis blizzard of, I want to say, 1991. I remember in that one, a story about a car up in Duluth. The snow buried the car so deep that it was just completely covered. Like you saw nothing. The story was, and I think I was seeing a picture of this in the paper, but a cross-country skier was out, just sort of exploring after the storm, and they came across this antenna sticking up out of the snow. That's all they could see. And the snow was flat enough for them to have been skiing over it, right? They see this antenna, they dig down, and there's a car down there, and there's some people in there to be rescued. Oh my God. I hope I had that story right, by the way. But I totally remember that. So in Minneapolis, where we were, it was like 3 feet of snow in that day or two, and it just shut everything down. When they cleared the streets, it was piled up so high you couldn't see over it. You could hardly cross a street or drive. It was nuts. And that was nothing compared to what they're going through in California. And again, that doesn't even mention the flooding that's happening now. You know, for me anyway, it's just so easy to see those pictures in general and then just kind of move on and not think about it. It's far away, nothing I can do about it. You know, I'm not proud of it, but that's the reality for me. But something about these snow pictures, and I think maybe having my own experience of snow, again, all those years on the road in a band, we had crazy snow stories, you know, like every year it seems like. It just hit me this week, just really thinking about the people out there, how hard it must be and how it's upending their lives, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. You know, if you don't know, snow piles up and sticks around, it turns into ice, it lasts way longer than you think it will. So anyway, that's my top story for this week. There's nothing to say on the Tolstoy scale. How does it serve humanity? Doesn't really apply to this one. Just thinking about the folks out there. All right, that's our top story. Next up, Inner Game Gold. All right, Inner Game Gold. And of course, these are the ideas and concepts I come back to over and over to help me stay on track. Last episode, we talked about one of my all-time favorite power quotes and concepts, which is, you have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. That idea all by itself can transform your inner game if you really let that work into your bones. So I hope you enjoyed that. This week, I want to look again at gratitude. And my favorite gratitude exercise that I got from Sam Harris. I actually did some of this week, just coincidentally, just kind of clicked into gratitude mode. Tried to let it soak in all the amazing things I have to be truly grateful for. And it's such a powerful and positive experience. So let's look at that one again. So the exercise is, and this sounds terrible at first, but stay with me. Exercise is, you imagine something really bad has happened, like you burnt down your house, or you were texting while driving and you hit someone and you killed him, okay? Just like truly terrible. You would give anything to undo, right? If you can go back to the way things were before it happened, you would do it. You'd give anything to get back there. So step one is to sit with this feeling and make it as real as possible. Something horrible has happened. Your life has changed forever. You'd do anything to get back. Step two is to realize that the life you'd give anything to get back to is the life you have right now, at this moment, everything about it. And to just let the glow of that gratitude flow into your feelings about your life right now. To be so grateful for it, you can barely stand it. You're in tears just thinking about how happy you are to have this beautiful, wonderful life back and all the things that are in it. It's a fun exercise. It's very interesting, and it's just so helpful. Not just this particular one, but gratitude in general. Studies have shown that a gratitude exercise and just the feeling of genuine gratitude is one of the best things you can do to improve both your mental and your physical health, actually. It's crazy how different this can make things feel. So that's our Inner Game Gold for this week, the Sam Harris gratitude exercise. Think about that, and we'll move on to raise your outer game. All right, raise your outer game, where we talk about the things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. And this week we're joined again by friend of the pod, Dr. John Porter. John, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, David.
All right, so what shall we talk about today? What's on your mind this week?
Well, I actually have been thinking about artificial intelligence, which is a little bit outside of my ordinary area of interest as it gets to healthcare and medicine. But it has become obvious to me that this is going to be part of what we do and already part of what we're doing with healthcare. So that's what's been on my mind.
So tell me more. How do you see it affecting you? Of course, you're a clinician, so
Yes.
I can imagine it affecting in a bunch of different realms. Is there a particular thing you're thinking about? How's it going to affect you in the clinic, for example?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things. Probably my first really clear realization of artificial intelligence in medicine was actually had to do with, of all things, skin cancer care. So there are these programs that take pictures of people, in various states of undress, and they kind of map out skin lesions on these individuals. And not surprisingly to me, actually, the computers are able to identify changes in those skin lesions more accurately than the human eye can, and can sort of pinpoint, this is a spot that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely, and this is, these are the ones that really, haven't changed much and continue to appear benign. So I was really fascinated by that, actually, and just, learning to accept that, computers and technology were going to do some things better than human beings did in the realm of medicine.
Yeah, can I interrupt you on that one? I have to ask you, you said the word changes. Does that mean that they have to have had multiple scans over time, or can they just look at first time seeing something and also do a good job of flagging something?
Great question. And I don't know the whole answer to that, but the application that I'm aware of is taking a series of photographs over time. So, I might stand with my arms out like this with my shirt off, and the picture gets taken, and then it gets interpreted by the artificial intelligence. And then a year later, I come back and I hold the same pose, they take the same picture, and they're able to identify new spots, change spots, these types of things. Although I do think that there is an ability for the computing to determine if the lesions that are there are higher risk or lower risk, although I'm not certain about that part.
I wonder if they'll be able to put that on a cell phone. I would think they probably could, home, not have to wait a year. If you've got something, take a picture every week or every month and send that to your doc or whatever. I'm reminded, too, and you probably heard about this. I think the first time I heard of it, I don't think it was called artificial intelligence then, and it might be a different thing, but it was called machine learning. And the word I'd heard was that radiologists, that the machine learning was getting better at detecting lung cancers than any radiologist was. I remember at the time, whoever was sharing this information, maybe Andrew Weil or something, but anybody, they said, yeah, radiologist, like, if you're thinking about going to that, you probably shouldn't know, because that's not going to be very long before that's just machine run. Are you familiar with that?
I am not very familiar with that, but it does not surprise me at all, because I'm sure it's, these algorithms of detecting different densities, as they are picked up on the radiographs, and then interpreting that through which densities are more likely to be concerning, and these types of things. And it makes absolute sense to me, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, there still has to be, at least at this juncture, there still has to be a human being there to put together the whole clinical scenario and be able to address it. So that feels reassuring for my career.
Yeah. No, for sure. I just had this funny thought that at some point, you could imagine getting a second opinion from a different AI. Right now you picture it, have the doc take a look at it, right? But you could imagine, depending on how they're generating their data and their algorithm, that they would just cross-reference to other algorithms,
I'd
and
like to
that
see
would
the
kind of,
GE, the GE
yeah,
artificial intelligence for this skin spot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, you were talking about this cancer detection. What other kind of
hmm
things are you thinking about as far as, like, well, let me ask you this too. Are you thinking it's going to affect, maybe not you personally, but people in your kind of work more, or what realms are you more thinking it's going to really transform?
Yeah, that's how it came back to me here recently. Was I was reading about the use of artificial intelligence actually in screening for and even treating mental health disorders, so psychiatric disorders. Basically,
Mm.
artificial intelligence as a counselor, for instance. And that might sound pretty unappealing to have like a robot, being your therapist. And I don't think that there is probably a role for that quite yet. But when you look at the way that people talk and the words they use and the things that they say, when they are in a state of mental health crisis, there are things that a computer can identify in these patterns that can really risk stratify somebody as being at really significant risk, or maybe somebody who
Mm.
is more at moderate or low risk. And then you can really be a little bit more efficient with your resources, because this that in particular is a resource sparse world in healthcare.
Mm.
So that was something that felt like a real potential for improvement, because the screening tools that I have right now are feel very weak to me,
Mm.
and ultimately not very helpful.
Mm.
I think I'm missing opportunities to help people, and I think I am over attentive to individuals who are probably not needing as much help based on the responses to those screening, very very brief screening tools that I
Mm.
have.
That makes sense. A similar line, I think, but not as intense, maybe. It is. I think when I was first playing around with ChatGPT, it almost immediately occurred to me that it would do, or at least some version of it soon, would probably do a really good job of just basic triage.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the phone, if the voice was, credible enough, when they're calling into urgent care, where do I need to go? Asking it in a sort of a natural language kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
asking them what the problem is, and being able to really respond in an appropriate way.
Yeah, no, I think that there would be a role for that, certainly. Yeah, I think, and part of me feels like allowing it to be a machine would be okay as well too. I mean, of course, you're creating a barrier for some people if you're asking them to use a keyboard to enter text. But I suppose you could use a voice to text as well.
Yeah,
But somebody would
yeah.
have to still be able to read that back. I guess that would be a hurdle perhaps for some people. But I feel like it can be distasteful sometimes to especially when people are feeling vulnerable in a health way, to feel like they're interacting with a computer that is trying to mimic a human. I think that it would be more palatable for some people to simply say, I'm interacting with a computer with the idea that I'm going to, get to some real human help eventually here.
Yeah. Well, like, for example, I wonder, and I don't want to say this out loud because I think I'll trigger it if I do, but hey, Apple Digital Assistant,
Right.
I think I need to go to urgent care. So
Mm-hmm.
you knew who you were asking.
Yeah.
And then if, obviously that particular product is not nearly the sophistication of ChatGPT, but if you could get to that level, so like
Right.
it's exactly what you're saying. I know who I'm asking. I know I'm asking a machine, but
Mm-hmm.
still it could possibly engage with me in a way that just helps streamline things. Or, it's like you said, with the more kind of extreme mental health thing, someone, hopefully if they feel the need, they'll pick up a crisis hotline, but maybe they could at some point do the same thing just with their digital device and have it serve them. That's
Right.
interesting.
And you could even imagine, like some of the smart technology have ways of, calling an emergency number if there is, the concern for an emergency situation. And you could even see, a technology like that be put into play as well.
Yeah. So do you have any concerns about it as it's approaching?
Well, I mean, the concerns are always that you're going to, miss important, opportunities for care, and that you're going to create an excessive, need for care. If every person that calls gets triaged to go to the emergency department, you're going to have a totally overwhelmed,
Hmm.
situation. So
Hmm.
it would have to be a pretty high level program for it to work, I think. And we're
Yeah.
probably not really very close to that.
Yeah.
So I think the utility right now would probably be to be at a much lower scale. It would be something akin to what we do on clinic intake questionnaires for mental health concerns, and just be a little bit more robust and accurate version of that. And
Hmm.
just maybe potentially offload some of the concern that could arise in people who are really kind of doing quite well, and to really highlight the concern where we're missing people who are really struggling, and maybe
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
communicating that. Yeah.
Yeah. I could almost see it. We were talking about the having it be able to kind of understand and recognize the language and stuff. Um, and it being the lead and consulting with the doc, but maybe the other way around. Like I'm picturing the clinician, they're entering their notes, and the AI is kind of looking at those and saying, "Have you considered? Based on what you put
Mhm.
in, this
Yeah.
might be something to think about if you haven't. Just to kind of give you a different perspective in the
Right.
back end. Not the patient wouldn't see that, but that might be interesting too.
Yeah, I think, and it would depend a lot on the context of that advice. I think that d- depending on the individual, that can be a little bit of an affront to autonomy, maybe. But
Yeah,
I'm always kind of looking for more ideas. Like,
yeah,
I'm happy to tell you, no, I don't agree with that idea, but I like hearing them, because I feel like otherwise I'm subject to these kind of blinding biases, where I get so fixated on whatever I believe to be true that I can't see other possibilities.
yeah. So you mentioned that there are certain kind of vocal patterns, word choices that do indicate or can indicate a flag of some sort of mental health crisis going on. I'm guessing that might well be true with just some physical visual cues also. Like if there was a camera on the wall watching,
Hmm.
just like you said, this scanning for the skin lesions, right? There's a
Hmm.
camera actually observing their kind of eye movement and just how they hold themselves. If maybe there'd be some possibilities there for again, like some second input on a potential diagnosis for certain kinds of
Yeah.
mental health things.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, one of the uh, criteria for an increased concern for suicidality was actually um, sighing more frequently. Apparently, deep sighs more
Oh,
frequently, which is something that
wow.
I don't know if I would pay attention to that, or if I
Yeah,
was noticing it, would I register that as, ooh, that could be a warning sign for me there. So little things like that are wow, how do you replace a computer that can keep all of that information, and right at its fingertips, and sort of say, you know here's what I see, and
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a perfect example, though, of it's just like having a second set of eyes in there. You know,
right.
like you say, you're talking to somebody, you're trying to connect with them at that level.
Hmm.
Hard to keep that kind of meta attention on something like they're sighing, but or
Right.
for that matter, their heart rate. When you ask them a question, I mean, certain kind of things would probably be,
Hmm.
kind of bio indicators
Sure.
that could be super
Absolutely.
helpful. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So for just plain old folks, anything we should be thinking about? It occurs to me that, and you touched on this earlier, there's going to be for a lot of people, there's going to be a real natural resistance.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I mean, this is just my bias, but I think there probably needn't be, especially if
Hmm.
you're still primarily there with your doctor. How do you think people should be thinking about this as it starts to show up? And when do you think it might start showing up in a way that they're even aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know that I have the best answer, but I think that it would, be the responsibility is going to be on the healthcare industry to help people understand this is, this is adjunctive, this is helpful to you, this is helpful to your healthcare team, and it is not replacing anything. It's yes and it's not either or, and I think that that's a really important. You have to somehow lock in that message and really create
Yeah.
a trusting sort of environment about that, because I mean, I think as we have all seen over the past few years, there's been a dissolution of trust in institutions, and I think that when you do things like this, you do risk furthering that kind of that fragmentation or that distrust of an institution, even
Yeah.
if your heart is in the right place. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure the best way to do it, but it would have to be with some kind of messaging that this is add-on, this is beneficial to you. But I mean, people are
Yeah.
already using this to a certain degree. There are apps, I think, that are designed to help people improve their emotional well-being. I can't remember the name of the big ones, like Happify.
I don't know.
Anyway, I think that was one of them. I may have the name wrong, but I mean, they're using artificial intelligence to generate, exercises and questions and these types of things to help guide people towards better mental health. There's not a person there like typing on a screen, helping somebody become happier.
Yeah.
This is a program that's doing that, and they work. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to be, there's a lot of potential for paranoia there. It's going to be really important so people can get the benefits. I'm guessing it probably happened at the doc level, to just how to talk about it, how to introduce it. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I've been interjecting a lot. Anything else particularly you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, just to your last point, I think I have those same concerns about people, adopting good technology in the right way. But it's pretty interesting. I mean, people do catch on pretty quick, and I think about there are transcriptionist services that are basically like computers in rooms now, and there was a big fear about, well, who's going to want a computer kind of like organizing things in your computer. I'd rather have the doctor or the nurse doing that kind of thing. And but people actually, when they see it happen, and they see, actually this frees up my doctor to pay more attention to me in a real sort of a human way. Like the robot stuff, the computer stuff can happen on that level, and I get the human being more for the human being stuff, and then there's a lot of buy-in. So that's maybe one thought about how to create a better engagement.
Yeah, excellent. All right, John, thank you. Super interesting. Appreciate you coming by. We will talk again soon, my friend.
All right,
and that is our Raise Your Outer Game for this week. Next up, our Charging Station Challenge. All right, our Charging Station Challenge. So last week, we had you sit with that powerful statement, you have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. I hope that gave you the lift it gives me. This week, we're going to do the Sam Harris gratitude exercise. I suppose you saw that coming. So once a day, sit for a few minutes. Imagine something terrible has happened. Your life has changed forever. You'd give anything to get back to how it was before. Then realize that the life you have now is that life. You'd give anything to get back. And let that glow of gratitude flow over your wonderful life. Man, it's so good. And so then again, as always, please share your experience in the community, what you're grateful for, what this exercise did for you. If you're not in the community yet, click the link in the notes. It's free. Just register. You can go straight into the challenge. And that's it for this week's challenge. Easier for me to say, this week's Charging Station Challenge. Next up, highly recommended. All right, so these, of course, are the things I'm digging on this week. Books, shows, gadgets, things I love and recommend. And this week, I'm excited about, it's not a new show, but a couple of old shows that are starting up a new season. Excuse me. The first is Ted Lasso. Our family, like pretty much everyone else, it seems like, loved that show. and are excited for it to start up again. It's interesting that it's also a little bit nerve-wracking, right? Because what if it's not as good as it used to be? You always worry about that. But fingers crossed. Looking forward to catching that probably this weekend. Again, one of the things we loved about it was that we could all enjoy it, and that's kind of rare. Gets more and more rare as the kids get older. The other show starting a new season this week is The Mandalorian. Also loved that show, though I'm not sure it was all of it. I think that might have been just me and Francis watching that one. It's quite a bit lighter. I mean, Ted's pretty light too. Mandalorian's quite light. We'll have to see if that one interests us as much as it did. Interesting side note, it has the same lead actor as our other current favorite show, which is The Last of Us. I've talked about that. Just totally love that show. Pedro Pascal is his name. His life must be pretty crazy right now. 2 pretty well-known shows going out at the same time. But I expect he'll give the new Mandalorian season a look as well, if only because now and then you just need some more Baby Yoda cuteness. Baby Yoda. Mandalorian is on Disney+. Ted Lasso is Apple TV+. And those are my recommendations for the week with fingers crossed. And that's it for today's episode. If you like what you've heard, please do tell your friends, invite them to join us, and rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast. It helps more people find the show and get the mental game boost we all need. If you have teenagers in sports, check out our Mental Game Starter Kit. It's a great set of resources to help you get started on the path of helping boost your child's mental game. RaiseYourInnerGame.com, scroll to the bottom. You can learn about it and register there. All free, of course. Super helpful resources. If you'd like to support the show so we can keep things ad-free, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link below, and thank you for that. For more mental game goodness, please do join our free community, the Raise Your Inner Game Charging Station. Click the link here. Go to RaiseYourInnerGame.com/community. Totally free. You'll love it. Also, if you're listening to this on audio but you like video, we post all our episodes on our YouTube channel as well. There's a link to that in the show notes. And finally, we'll close as usual with Leo Tolstoy, again from the Raise Your Inner Game book. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. That's what we're doing. We're serving the people in our lives. It's super important, so keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time.